Good morning and welcome to Braver Cultures Means Being Able to Dance Like Nobody's Watching, a truly unique collaboration between Aon and AIA in celebration of Dive-In 2022. My name is Cynthia and I'm from the Health Solutions team in Aon, and I am delighted to be your host for today's event. Today, we're shining a spotlight on mental health and well-being, and we're going to be talking about the courage required of all of us to be the change we want to see in our communities and how we can and must create safe and brave spaces for more to dance to their own abilities and potential. We want to start by asking our audience a very specific question. What is that one song that whenever you hear it has you dancing like nobody's watching? Whatever it is, we want you to share it. We have a goal today to build an event playlist comprising of all the songs that inspire our audience to dance like nobody's watching. To ensure that your song is part of our special playlist, please go ahead and share it in the chat. Behind the scenes, our team is going to collect all your contributions to compile the playlist in honor of our experience today. We will share the playlist after today's events to all our registered guests. Let's get moving now with our event. In a moment, I am going to hand the stage over to Anthea Ong. Anthea served as a National Member of Parliament from 2018 to 2020 in the 13th Parliament. As a self-described full-time human being and part-time everything else, she's a mental health advocate, social entrepreneur and impact investor, life and leadership coach, strategic consultant, yoga and wellness instructor, and author, amongst many other roles. She is never seen without headgear to match her multiple hats. We are excited to see what hat she's donning today. In her keynote today, Anthea will take us through some of the latest developments on workplace mental well-being and ESG priorities, and what mental well-being centered leadership looks like. She will also share her personal journey with mental health that took her all the way to the August Chamber of Parliament and the birth of the first CEO collective for mental health in Singapore and possibly the world. Anthea will be joined by Pete Bentley, Chief Innovation Officer and Future of Work Practice Leader for Aon's Human Capital Solutions, and Zikit Wong, CEO of AIA Singapore, for a panel discussion. Pete, Anthea, and Zikit will consider the actions both organizations and individuals can take to transform our workplace into a source of positive well-being where psychological safety is present to enable all to dance to our different abilities like nobody's watching. This event is about opening our eyes, ears, and hearts to the power of leveraging our diverse abilities. To celebrate this opportunity, we will conclude our event today with a truly exceptional sensory experience. You will not want to miss out on sharing by Hush Tea Bar Enterprise. So let's get started. Please help me put your emoji skills to the test. You can track your cursor towards the emoji icon at the bottom of the screen. Select your emoji of choice, and please give Anthea Ong a warm welcome to our virtual stage.
Thanks very much, Cynthia. Thank you for the kind introduction. Hi, good morning, everyone. It's very nice to have you here. Thank you for having me. I'm going to be using Mentimeter for today's session, so just bear with me as I call this up. And really, the whole idea of using Mentimeter is so that it is not just me staring into the screen, but also having a little bit of interaction with all of you. So if I may just trouble you to take out your phone, or you can also obviously use your laptop. You can QR code, or you can actually type in menti.com, and then just enter the code that you see right there. Anytime there is actually an interaction, don't worry, the instruction will also come out at the top of the slide. But I'm using Mentimeter as my slide deck today as well. So as the title said, today is about building braver couches, and I'm gonna the next 20 minutes or so share with you why I think leaders make us braver couches. Love the theme very much. So well done, Aeon team. Now, before we get started, I would like for us to do a quick check-in, if you will. So if you're already in your Mentimeter, please just for now, without thinking too much, too hard, it's anonymized anyway. So no one really knows who is putting out what on the screen. But I think it's really us sort of walking the talk about why we're here and showing the spotlight on mental health, as Cynthia said. And so as you see this word cloud unfolding before you, I think it's also really a very nice visual assurance that despite us not being able to be in the presence of each other, we still know that, there are humans that are actually part of this virtual room right now. This is my own little capture that I'm not a robot, so I do this test all the time. I love that one of you is saying COVID negative now, so congratulations. I hope you feel better. But really, really cool to see that most of you have obviously entered excited, which is why it's in the middle. Encourage you to use this also to check in with your team. I feel it's a really healthy way to show that emotions have a place in the workplace and society, obviously. So now we're here to discuss well-being, as Cynthia said. So I would like to now invite all of you, if you're called to it, to just take 3 deep breaths with me. You can close your eyes, you are called to it, you're comfortable with it. If not, just lower your gaze, soften your gaze, and just do that 3 deep breaths on your own, making sure it's a long, deep inhalation and a slow, complete exhalation. Thank you. It's still very surreal for me that it was only 16 years ago that I was in that deep, dark place with a broken heart, a broken marriage, and a broken business with only $16 to my name. I really would not have imagined that it would put me on this trajectory that would allow me to be here with you, nor would I think that I would actually be called to the Parliament of Singapore as a nominated member appointed by the president to champion for mental health and mental well-being as a whole of government and whole of society priority, but particularly for better mental health care policies to reduce stigma and discrimination. So just please know that I'm coming from a place of deep gratitude as I share and take this opportunity to share my learnings with you today, especially about being braver, to the theme of the event today. Now, before I start, I thought it's important that we're all on the same page, that mental well-being is no longer just discussed as an HR responsibility, but it's a strategic priority. Whether your organization is already well underway or working towards that, I sincerely hope that we can all agree there's no health without mental health. So therefore, it can't just be carved away from physical health as a vertical issue for the organization or even within DEI. It is not. It affects all of us, not just some of us. So wanted to also set the stage in terms of, where we are. I'm sure this is not new to you. ESG, as we all know, stands for environment, social, and governance. And the S, the social element or the social impact of ESG is becoming an increasingly important consideration for investors, especially with the pandemic and the mounting challenges of rising prices and geopolitical tensions and global uncertainties, accelerating these trends. Well-being, as most of us here would know and hopefully agrees, it cuts across the pillars of ESG concurrently. Health equity is the employer's responsibility to ensure that access to benefits and to healthcare, right? It goes beyond basic employee needs. Climate change, as we know, has undeniable impacts on human well-being. Now, just to share the principles for responsible investment, or PRI, which is a United Nations-backed network of responsible investors, listed mental health actually and access to healthcare amongst the top 4 priority social issues emerging from the pandemic, and that's expected to stay. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange updated its ESG reporting guide to require reporting details on working hours, rest periods, equal opportunity under employment, etc. From last year in July. In the US, the Workforce Investment Disclosure Act, which was only enacted in 2021, now requires public companies to disclose human capital metrics, which we see it as a direct as well as proxy measures for workplace well-being. So now, with having these strategic developments as our backdrop, let's dive into a more immediate and intimate discussion with building braver cultures as leaders and managers. And I hope that this slide that's in front of you is helpful also for some of you to make your business case. Now, so let's start again. And so picked out your Mentimeter again. What comes to mind when you think about mental health? Or when I say mental health, what's the first thought? Again, no right or wrong, just important for us to see, what is the diversity of perspectives that we're going to get here. Great. Now, so as you're doing this, today I will be organizing my sharing around 3 areas, of course, based on the theme of braver culture. The first one really would be, which we're going into now, is to be the change that we want to see, right, in our workplace, in our people, our team members, our co-workers. Right. Okay. So you can see, just as we're showing that, that more and more people are coming in. So I'm going to let you do that. But I'm going to also quickly take this opportunity while some of you are still thinking about, what comes up for you with mental health. I take this opportunity where I can to show this quick Corey Keyes diagram as we begin, hopefully, to have more informed and nuanced conversations on mental health, right? So I encourage you to do the same with more mental literacy in your organizations. Now, this shows that mental health is a continuum, right? It's really not binary. It's not whether you are mentally ill or you are healthy, or you are, in good health or bad mental health. You could be flourishing with a mental illness and languishing without one, which some even argue that it's just as important to take care of. Every single one of us has the potential to move along the continuum that's shown in front of you at different points of our life, depending on what life throws at us, right? So it doesn't really only affect certain people, nor some segments of society. I hope this understanding anchors us in empathy more innately when we talked about mental health and mental well-being. Now, I'm going to just quickly go back again and see what has come up. So you can see that it is, it is really a diversity, right? And whether you are surprised by some of the words, because I only said mental health and look at just how different, the word cloud is appearing in front of you. So why this diversity? Because we see the world as we are, not as it is. We also therefore see the other as we are, not as they are, because we're shaped by our beliefs, values, our experiences, our influences, etc., right? In how we interpret the world and what is before us. And this leads to biases, which we all have, every one of us, enlightened leaders, managers or not. And these biases therefore shape our behaviors that may be unconscious. None of us are intentionally trying to harm others. And so, in short, the fish cannot see water. Now, this might explain the disconnect between employers' expectations and that of employees, despite the increased emphasis and investments in inclusion, mental health with EAPs, mindfulness and yoga training, mental wellness ambassadors, and the list goes on, right? So in June 2022, just this year, Deloitte did a survey and showed that only 47% of workers believe that executives understand how difficult the pandemic has been for them, yet 90 or almost 90, 89% of the C-suite say they do recognize how challenging it's been. And similarly, only 53% of employees feel that companies' executives have been making the best decision for their well-being during the pandemic, but 88% of the C-suite believe that decision-making has been exemplary, right? So I think outcomes like the Great Resignation and the freshly coined quiet quitting phenomenon further exemplify this disconnect. So what are we not seeing? I believe we cannot solve a problem with the same way of thinking that created it in the first place. Our reflex response as leaders and managers is often to look at solutions outside of ourselves, which is not a bad thing. It's obviously the secondary and tertiary interventions that we look at. But what if we are the solution? We are also the solution. What if we are the primary intervention? As leaders and managers, we set the tone of the organization and teams. We contribute in large part, I know this is going to be a bitter pill to swallow, to that culture that's still not safe for mistakes to be made, right? And for vulnerabilities to be shared, and not allowing people to be braver in seeking help. And that's still not mental health friendly enough for our people to dance to their own abilities or to dance like no one's watching. So let's do another, interaction. Which do you think is the top characteristic for the highest functioning teams in the world's most well-known company? Now, if you had paid attention to the slides that I showed earlier, this might come out. So these were the characteristics. So have a easy guess, I guess, what that is. But it's also important to note the other characteristics. So you're right. Psychological safety was stated by members of Google's highest functioning teams as the top characteristic, way ahead of meaning and impact. And in fact, meaning and impact were lower than even dependability. I was just there actually at the office on Saturday for a mentoring program that I do with them for ITE students. And so psychological safety, as understood in Google and practiced in Google, was explained to me in this uncomplicated one-liner. Psychological safety is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. So when employees feel comfortable asking for help, sharing suggestions informally, or challenging status quo without fear of negative or social consequences, organizations are more likely to innovate quickly, unlock the benefits of diversity, and adapt well to change. Now, to me, I think the concept of psychological safety is also the absence of interpersonal fear. So fostering psychological safety depends on leaders. I mean, I think it's very intuitive. At all levels, learning and demonstrating specific leadership behaviors that help their diverse employees thrive. So what does well-being centric leadership look like? What qualities and values help engender a braver culture and the psychological safety climate that we're talking about that, directly impacts performance and functioning? A senior partner I know in Accenture, who leads a US $1 billion business by day, shared his experience with his generalized anxiety disorder openly in a company town hall, which obviously he did it with lots of trepidation. But then he was just amazed at the sort of the positive shift, huge shift that happened with his team dynamics after. Now, I think we will all agree that a leader wanting to build psychological safety must first admit that they are infallible, right? That they are not, that they are fallible, rather. Change requires courage. Most of you would know shame expert Brene Brown's famous quote that you have to embrace the suck you can't get to courage without rumbling in vulnerability. So I think coming forward and sharing our vulnerability creates trust for our team members and co-workers, particularly in making them feel less and alone when they are actually going through mental health difficulties themselves. It's very obvious that it would break stigma. It would also, especially break self-stigma, which exists in all of us. And therefore, we must create braver cultures by being brave ourselves first. Now, as I'm going through the 4 C's, I will encourage you to think about how you rank yourself in the sliding scale that's coming in front of your screen. I'm going to turn off my WhatsApp, sorry. And now the second is compassion. A study actually found that 86% reported being able to navigate demands between life and work when they felt their leaders and managers are empathetic. And when we talk about empathy and compassion, and we're really talking about care. Caring to me means active listening, but it's also active appreciating, right? That we are actually acknowledging and appreciating, because people do not remember what you do for them. They remember how you make them feel. Many would wonder if we can be firm and compassionate. Yes, of course, they are not mutually exclusive. A CEO I know who runs and leads an educational institution here, a well-known one, had to transition out a team member who needed more time to recover from his mental health condition in order to be passionate and fair to the rest of the team. However, he did not stop helping the team member in his own personal capacity. And I think that's how we must be able to make the distinction. In terms of commitment, we talked about leaders, being courageous and brave in sharing their vulnerability, but it's equally important for leaders to also role model healthy, especially mentally healthy behaviors beyond saying that they support mental well-being, so that their team members and co-workers feel they also can prioritize self-care and boundaries. I'm notorious with my team members for being and non-negotiable with my yoga and meditation practice. And I'm no longer apologetic about turning out at meetings in my yoga gear anymore. Now, a study found that 56%, and this is interesting, of employers actually walk the talk by having a formal written strategic plan on well-being for their organization and teams. And these employers reported better health outcomes than those who did not. So be the change that you want to see in your people, and be committed to it. We are what we do, not what we say we do. Last but not least, clarity. So what is this? This is offering clarity. And it's tricky, right? Offering clarity amid uncertainty and volatility is tricky because, leaders are expected to have all the answers, which, it obviously it's not true. And not possible. So I think authenticity in communication and being equally open about what is clear and what it's not is critical to establish trust. Employees who felt they experienced good crisis leadership reported in the study lower anxiety, stress, and depression levels. Now, from clarity in communication, I want to say that having clarity in your purpose, our purpose as leaders and managers, and making decisions that's actually tying back to that purpose is really critical, because this will instill confidence and goodwill in the people you are leading and taking care of, especially in these times of the great vaccination and quiet quitting. In fact, a New York Times survey found that employees who derive meaning from work under purpose-driven leadership are 3 times more likely to stay in the organization. But we also know from the Google study that psychological safety is also above meaning. So just bear that in mind. All right, so this is the average of all of you. I think it's important that as a dive-in community, where we are, and it's very typical. It's always easier for us to be clear or compassionate and committed, but courage is always a bit more work that we need to do, and which is why events like this, calling for braver culture is really important. Now, so on the second note, I think braver cultures also means that we must be well to lead well. As much as leaders have to be the change you want to see in their people, And workplace culture, they must also take care of themselves. The second C of compassion is not complete without self-compassion, nor is the third C on commitment complete if you don't have a personal well-being plan for yourself as you do for your organization and your team. We all know that, pandemic fatigue, having to deal and hold the fort, drive so much of what needs to be done for the pandemic has taken a toll on many leaders and managers, and some are veering towards exhaustion. The same survey I shared with you earlier from Deloitte has found that 70% of C-suite are seriously considering quitting for a job that better supports their well-being. And this same study showed just how exhausted, depressed, and stressed out they are. A 2021 research by McKinsey, and I want to share this because this is also about diversity and inclusion, found that women were burning out more than men given the gendered roles that we still play in the family during lockdowns and work from home arrangement, and even in this hybrid work mode that we're in. This burnout effect signals a significant risk for companies losing their top business female leaders and the advancements that we have made as organizations and as a society. In fact, a coaching client of mine who led a $300 million MNC as a CEO, she devoted much personal time taking care of those under her charge throughout most of the pandemic, while still remarkably achieving the performance targets. But like my client, the invisible work women leaders perform daily, which is helping organizations survive and even thrive in her case. Unfortunately, their efforts are often unseen and undervalued, according to this report by McKinsey. The perception that I think CEOs and executives should demonstrate unwavering leadership and steadfast support of their people, come what may, also increases fears of seeking help. Right? Someone once told me that when you're burning out, you have stopped being a human. So it's very lonely at the top, right? So Cynthia mentioned that collective that we started, and this is called Work Well Leaders. I initiated this with about 20 fellow C-suite leaders. Aeon and Andrew are obviously proud champion members of the collective. Our aspiration is for leaders to be well, to lead well. We launched the Be Well programs that included CEO commits to supporting, having a guide for CEOs to know how to sort of plan out their personal well-being. We have the CEO Connect that pairs CEOs together, but like a buddy system and a peer support. CEO Breathe is monthly mindfulness sessions, and the CEO Dialogue, which next one, the sixth one, is coming out next month for World Mental Health Day. And we're going to have Zaki Mohammed, the Senior Minister of State for Manpower, join us. So these are really tools, resources, practices that helps CEOs and leaders, and then the lead well obviously is for the rest of their organization, right? I myself felt like I was burning out, and I took a whole month last year actually when a physical health condition really knocked me hard. Just because you take breaks doesn't mean that you're broken. I do strongly think that getting rest and seeking help are signs of strength and a good leadership practice. We can't pour from an empty cup, and I think especially without hurting ourselves and others. So now the last point, it's about braver cultures, meaning. What does braver cultures mean? I think the third one is braver cultures mean to be the source of mental well-being. Now, I would like you to take it's a lot to rank, but just do intuitively what comes up for you. And this is the challenge I would like to put out to all the leaders and managers and C-suite, especially out there. It's becoming harder to separate the outside world from what's happening within an organization as the line between life and work continues to blur, right? I think we're all feeling that. Lived experiences not only drive how work is viewed, but also what people need to thrive. So let's see what comes up for you in terms of how you rank these stressors for itself. And it's obviously a mixed bag of it. And I've taken this from many of the studies that were done, some during the pandemic. So some of these are COVID-related stressors, and some are just kind of general stressors. And you will see almost everywhere I go, the family and relationship challenges will come up, right, as the top, and caregiving responsibilities as well. So I would like to just, conclude with this, as I finish my sharing, instead of accepting that workplace is the cause of stress and anxiety and mental ills, and fixing this as leaders with this as a problem definition, can we reframe this to one where work and workplace become the source of good mental health, right? How can work give us the skills, the strengths, the meaning, the structure that in fact help us navigate the complex demands of life? And you can see that many of this on top are not directly related to what we do at work, but they come with us when we go to work, and it exacerbates the work stress and the stressors. So how can we build brave places at the workplace for our people to be the best version of themselves? What would that look like for your organization? What needs to happen for you to get there? Now, that night, 16 years ago, as I lay on the floor, same floor behind me with only $16 to my name, I was so awash with despair and shame that actually for a fleeting moment, I contemplated the distance between my 18th floor apartment and the ground below. I did not think I would get out of it, to be really honest, but I did. And it was painful and slow, but I did. And I think I did because I had a support structure. I still have that support structure that allowed me to brave my way out of the abyss of hopelessness. I think we all agree everybody deserves that, but not everyone has that. Diversity, well, I missed this. Diversity is really bringing people into a safe space. Inclusion is, I think, about making a new space, a brave space, a better space for everyone to be transformed and leave changed. So let's build braver cultures as the fish finally sees the water. I might be past my 20 minutes, but if you indulge me with just a few more seconds, please let me conclude by reading this poem that came to me called Brave Space by Mickey Jones. Brave Space. Together, we will create brave space because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side. Thank you for listening, and thank you for all the important work you do in mental well-being. Thank you.
So first and foremost, thank you very much, Anthea. That's been amazing. Thank you for such an authentic and inspiring sharing that you've provided today. I didn't realize we were going to get poetry as well. So everyone, hello, I'm Peter Bentley. So I'm the Chief Innovation Officer and the Future of Work Leader for Aon's Human Capital Solutions business. I do it globally, but I'm based here in Singapore. So thank you for joining us today. I'm going to moderate our panel discussion. I hope it's more of a chit chat and we'll keep it informal. But really what I hope is that we can focus on the why, how and what and really make this subject very practical for the audience. I'm joined by Anthea, of course, and Zakid Wong, who is our CEO of AIA Singapore. So thank you and welcome. Really a big thank you for taking the time. So as we just enter the discussion, we've got 20 minutes, and really Zakid, as demonstrated by Anthea, you can see how empowering and compelling and authentic storytelling can be. I think it makes a real difference. And through adversity, Anthea found purpose and used honesty and that experience to really pass it forward. She's passing it forward now, and we're all learning from her. So Zakid, maybe if we just take that lead, could you share a little why you feel engaged in the conversation, why it's important for you to take the challenge, and and why we should be building braver cultures to support mental well-being in our workplace.
Thank you, Pete. Good morning, everyone. Anthea, what an inspiring presentation. I've heard your story a few times, and every time I have different inspiration from your story. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Kit.
Yeah, why am I here? Honestly, mental well-being is I'm personally very passionate about mental well-being. I was put on this chair right smack at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was really stressful for me then because I could not see my 1,000 staff, right? I had to learn how to speak into the camera. So I would like to think that I'm better at it now, because when we first started, it was so awkward. To imagine the number of staff behind the camera, and all these new ways of working and trying to adapt, it took a toll on us. I mean, not just myself, I'm sure all my staff. So I'm really personally very passionate about mental well-being, and I started to call out, and I realized that I'm speaking more and more about how important it is to be well ourselves. And the Work Well Leaders framework, the Be Well and Lead Well, is something that I talk about all the time. So thank you for giving me that knowledge, and I truly believe that we need to be well first, which is ourselves, in order to lead well, in that order. And I add on one more step, is to do well. So we need to be well ourselves in order to lead well, so that the business can do well. And I say this many times. So be well, it is so critical and it's so important. And it's still a journey, Pete. It's still a journey, because it is we are in a senior management seat, right? We do have a responsibility to continue to call out, to provide platform and initiatives to keep that mental well-being culture alive. Yeah, and that's what I'm still doing, actually, after 2 years.
I think it's so important. I think one of the two observations I take away from both yourself and Anthea is I always joke as a Brit that, well-being and talking about your emotions are maybe two things that we just don't do. And the thing that I personally picked up on and resonated with me is actually the practical aspects of well-being. The performance mindset. Anthea was touching on it about the innovation. So maybe from my perspective, what I'm passionate about, I personally believe that well-being is the foundation to how we change, and change is inevitable. And I think quite often it's easy to say no, but it's brave to say yes. In my job, I'm a change agent. I work around transformation within Aon, but also with clients. And when you say yes, it carries responsibilities, and there's risk of failure, and it causes insecurity and anxiety. So I sometimes think about well-being from more of a practical standpoint, in terms of well-being is the enabler that helps push things forward. If you're comfortable, if you're brave, we talk about pioneering product management in my side of the game, and it's really the comfort with failure is a massive part of that, and therefore well-being becomes fundamentally important to that process. So, as Anthea mentioned, how we support people as they work through change, not only is fundamental to how we innovate, but it's also how we nurture our talent and invest in their well-being. I guess I have from that a question, and Anthea, you spoke about well-being centered leadership, and I think that's really cool. The how aspect I was talking about. So how is leadership style influential in creating psychological safety for those living with mental health challenges, but just for the workforce en masse?
Yeah, it's a great question, Pete, and I think you just made a really important link, right, between how we want to take more risks, which need to happen with more innovation, which then leads to better performance, which then benefits, everyone, especially our people. So I think that link is important. I mean, as you said, I've shared quite a bit about the leadership qualities, but I think the how needs to come in a way where a leader, a well-being centered leader, would then be making psychological safety an explicit priority, right? And it can be at the manager level, at the team level. And what does that look like? That could look like, establishing norms to support failures, and rewarding risk taking. And you talked about that as well. And those are the norms which can be, integrated into practices and processes that really is so fundamental to the well-being of our team members. Because if they know where to go, if they're not feeling good and they know there is already a process and a practice in place, that you can actually go to the manager, you can go to the team, and that the norms are already in place for you to sort of be able to say, I'm going to have to step back because I'm not doing so well, or I'm going to come forward because I have this wild idea, and knowing that, not holding fear and being completely, beside himself or herself, wanting to bring up something that's of, great passion or concern. That's all the how, right? So the how translates into how do you integrate this into business practices, team structures, team dynamics. I think it's really important. I mean, for me, when I heard from Google on Saturday, I counted 10 slides that they did. And at least 5 of those slides, they talked about, rewarding risk taking and fostering psychological safety, right? At least 5 of them. So that's become their DNA. And they have processes. They have even an app, which I thought was really cute. They encourage frequent appreciation. So they have an app or some sort of a portal where, you will be pinged to be reminded, who do you need to appreciate, right? Today at the workplace, the team. And it can be anyone. It could even be the auntie. It could be, your boss, someone who you don't even directly engage with, or, your team members. So I think there's so many ways to do the how, but I think to start with, we need to be committed to the 4 C's, and then, implement that in the form of establishing these practices and processes.
Sorry, Pete, if I may add, something that I use very often is I always tell the people in the meeting room, right? There's no hierarchy in problem solving. There is no hierarchy in problem solving. Everyone should speak up because you are an expert in your own field. So, and I always say that, and always, when everybody just keep quiet, sometimes when we ask for solutions, and I will call that out and say, guys, there's no hierarchy in problem solving.
Yeah.
And another thing that I use a lot is this, Pete, you were talking about you got to be comfortable with failures and all that. We all know about celebrating success and failures, but I always turn that around and say, there's no failure, there's only learning moments. So it is always learning moments for us. It's not about failure. Yeah. So I think these are the things that the how bit, right? I think we all carry that responsibility, as what Anthea said. We need to walk the talk and continuously say that. Yeah.
I think that's amazing. I think it's a great ad, and I love the hierarchy and problem solving point. I think quite often we're maybe too rigid and not open enough, and maybe that's the culture. Different geographies different, but also the culture that companies provide. I think the important aspects on how this is enabled is through storytelling. I think both of you have provided great stories where it's like, look, these are the things that happen. And I think sometimes, those stories, you get really amazing and compelling stories around, I talked to our chief people officer, and she'll say stories about, the fact that people have suicidal thoughts and the intervention that the company provides. Those people don't get fired. There's no downside to them reaching out and engaging, and we're able to help and facilitate as a company. And I don't think people realize you need to talk about the good and the bad. Like, yes, it's great our company does that. Like the bad aspect in terms of people actually think they might get penalized for reaching out. I think that's part of a cultural element to fix. And I think there's small things that need to be done as well. Our chief wellness officer who's just joined, was an entrepreneur before. It's been a while since she's worked within a corporate environment. She's got young children. she uses the story that Rachel took her, she left work at 5:30, heaven forbid, and she bumped into her boss and he said, look, have a good day. And, she had her own nerves about leaving at 5:30, thinking the corporate environment was about FaceTime. And felt relieved. And that's just a tiny little action of just not even a conscious decision by her boss to, clearly didn't register it. And I think these are important things. And the other aspect as well is historically, the rubbish rises up. I always used to say, everyone that works below me, I am the calm, positive, optimistic person. And then my boss sees this really miserable person. But like I actually think these days we need to be much more open and we need to show our vulnerabilities to everyone. When we're frustrated, when we're anxious, when we're insecure. I mean, they need to be role modeled properly, so that the negative behaviours of all of those things are not inflicted on other ones. But I think that role modeling is really important, and it's inspiring when barriers are broken down and we have a more open and honest and inclusive. We need to avoid groupthink conversations.
Pete, can I also add in a kind of a funny little trivia practice? So with me in certain groups of mine, because we all have this fear of sort of speaking up, especially being interrupted, right? And so what we do, and this is very typical practice in safe conversations, you actually give a talking stick, right? So the only person who can speak is the one with the talking stick. And sometimes we use a water bottle, but sometimes we use a banana. Right, so unless you're holding the banana, please just stay quiet and listen to whoever's got the banana. And I think that over time allows us to practice not wanting to be hasty and wanting to jump in, because that's part of creating a safe space as well, actually, to just listen. To listen and not listen to respond, right?
Well, I think that's first of all, you can never go wrong with a banana as a prop, but also from a perspective of just giving people space to talk and the right to talk, and I think that's important. Zakid, what can decision makers do across organisations to drive systematic change, inclusive of mental health and well-being? Where are your thoughts around that?
I think it's very important to continue to introduce initiatives to drive systematic change. I mean, it's not just come up to one webinar and talk about mental well-being and then you forget about that. It's as I said earlier, it was really a continuous effort, right? So providing the platform, let the staff access to platform. I mean, I think if I may share this little story, about 6 months into the pandemic, I did a webinar and I call out mental well-being and I introduce it's important to seek help, to seek professional help. And when I introduce that professional help, we work with some vendors and all that. And I say, guys, to the employees, I say, you have access to all this help. I've got staff who PM me and said that I'm so glad you offer the help because you know that I just got discharged from the IMH, the mental institution. And I then went on and had several one-on-one conversation with him. And I've just felt that it was so rewarding, right? That he came out and shared his personal struggle with me on one-on-one basis. And it was a very junior style. So there are moments like that that kept me going, that I know and reminded that it is very important to continue to walk the talk, to give the platform, to introduce many different initiatives, whether is it webinars, platforms, tools, and all that, and talk about it at every staff town hall that I have, and that will drive systematic change. And also the tone at the top is very important. It's not just me, it's also my exco, it's also my HODs, everyone say the same message. Continue to it is important to the tone at the top is important because that will cascade the message down to everyone in the organization. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's great sharing. And as I say, these stories are really impactful. It's amazing how quickly time flies and we're almost up. But one of the things that we were aspiring for is to make this practical, and we've had some brilliant suggestions involving bananas and specific stories and some great frameworks around problem solving. But could I ask maybe just what tactically, practically, what would be just some small suggestions around how we build a braver working place so that we can dance like no one's watching and build these diverse abilities? So just briefly, if I could ask for a couple and from both of you, and then I'll close it out. So Anthea, maybe you'd like to kick off first.
Yeah, I think I shared some of this. So the first one for me, I think, would definitely be, listen to listen, and that seems easy enough, but it's also the harder thing to do. But I think that would be one. The other is really active appreciating. So acknowledge, affirm, appreciate, the 3 A's. And this is everyone around you, and it doesn't mean that you do it in a fake way, but genuinely, if you really felt like you've been helped and supported, always sort of do that. And also for our leaders and managers, nothing's more important than to make sure our people know we see them and we hear them by way of acknowledgement and affirmation.
One simple tool for myself is I say you don't know when you really don't know. Yeah, tell people you don't know, you don't have the answers, and say it. Say, I don't have the answers, I don't know what's the answer. Anybody knows? So when you show your vulnerability, right, people will speak up. So I think that's very important. It's something that I do all the time, because I mean, I only have, my core competency is distribution, sales. Other than that, I know nothing. And I say that all the time, I know nothing else.
I think that's a brilliant one, and I always, having been a salesperson in my previous life, and the encouragement of just filling blank time or dead time, I always say the ability to say what you don't know builds confidence around what you do know, and actually that's a security issue when we need people to feel secure to be able to say they don't know. So I think that's a great add. Just from my side, I think what we're talking about is a muscle. It's actually something we need to build. It's a capability we need to build. And, very practically, therefore, you need to make it a habit, in the same way as you don't go to the gym for a while, it's hard to pick it up again, and things like that. So I suggest that everyone should read Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think it's an amazing book. It's got lots of little hacks in terms of just how you trick your mind into doing these things. The 3 A's, the 4 C's, all of that stuff, how do you append it to something to make it a habit? So I think that's just my suggestion from there. But we're at time, we're actually over time. But like from a perspective of thank you both for the amazing sharing and just being so open. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you, Sakid and Anthea. And from here, I'm passing back to Cynthia to take you through to the Hush Tea Bar.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Anthea, Zakit, and Pete. It has indeed been a privilege really to observe your courageous sharing today. A very quick reminder to all our audience, keep typing in your song suggestions for our Dance Like Nobody's Watching playlist. The song list is growing, but there's always room for one more song. I'm delighted now to welcome back Anthea Ong to our screen and to lead us into our much anticipated final session today, brought to you by Hush Tea Bar. Over to you, Anthea.
Thanks so much, Cynthia, and thank you obviously to Tony and Andrew and the Aon team for giving this opportunity to the Hush team to be here to share a little taster of what we do and what we call the Hush experience. And thanks, Tines, for showing the screen. So actually, before I start, I'd like to openly say happy birthday to Tines, and thank you for sharing your birthday with us this morning.
Thank you.
Very brave of you. Okay, so what we're going to do today, like I said, it's going to be actually a bit of a bridge version of the full Hush experience. Hush is a social movement to bring the worlds of the hearing and the deaf together, but more importantly, to promote mental well-being and empathy through a cup of tea in silence. We can't see you in person, so we hope you have a cup of tea or a cup of something hot and soothing, and please don't make that a glass of whiskey if you can. But I shouldn't judge, actually. If that's what makes you calm, go ahead. And what we do is to obviously give an opportunity and platform for the deaf to lead us through an experience that let us come into their world and challenge our notion in that process about what disability is. If in a world where there are no spoken words needed, who is the disabled one? And in not speaking and just be listening in silence, what do you hear and how do you connect with yourself? So on that note, I'm gonna introduce, you already heard me call Tinez. So Tinez is our team lead at Hush. The Hush team is made up of people from the deaf community, but also people who are hearing with lived experience at some level with mental health as well. And Gotwa is our dev lead. He also, helms our facilitation for many of our Hush sessions. Gotwa is who we would say had someone with profound loss of hearing. I'm going to ask them to share their sign name. So my sign name is this, and then I'm going to ask Gotwa to share his sign name before we get started. And Dinesh, you want to quickly also share what's his sign name?
Yeah, so my sign name is the letter T, and then it goes up to an A. Yes. So that's those are my initials.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, thanks. So for the rest of the session, we're going to do this in silence. I will come back at the end of it, but most of it, Gotwa will be leading you. So it would be really awesome if you can actually give your attention to him because of the platform, he can't see all of you, which is always a little bit unsettling for a deaf person. But he knows we are here to give him the smiles, the few of us who are on the panel. So over to Gotwa. Thank you, Gokwa. Now, so he's invited all of you just to take a couple of minutes to just ponder on these two questions that you're seeing on screen now that Tinez has put out. When was the last time you felt vulnerable at the workplace? Who and what made you braver to come through it? So we just take a few minutes for you to just have some time. And if you want to write down, your reflections, feel free to do so. But let's just do this for a minute and a half or two. Hey, I hope that was a good moment, a short one, a very brief one, but a good moment of reflection for you. I think as we are looking to create a more inclusive space, it's also important to draw from our own personal experiences and tap into that place of empathy, that deep empathy, and that usually comes up with sometimes the best way of looking at solutions as well. So this, as I said, with Harsh, is a very abridged. Usually we do this in person with a cup of tea that's being served. You go through a lot more of the interaction with the dev team. But we hope that you have a taster of this. Let me just get Tinez to show up. So just wanting to make sure we keep to timing. Want to just now get you to come back to Mentimeter and all that you've heard. So this would also be helping Tony and the Aeon team. So after today's session, the first change that I shall make to contribute to braver cultures for my people is, and my people can be your team, your co-workers even, but we are relating obviously to the workplace. But if you want to go beyond the workplace, that's fine too. And again, we're hoping that this comes up so that we all get a sense of how we're consolidating the experience that we've had together today, this morning. So hopefully you have not closed off your Mentimeter. We wait for you to share. Again, whatever comes up for you, it's anonymized.
Anthea, I just want to let you know that when we put the code in, it doesn't seem to be refreshing with this slide.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Okay, it's come up now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So maybe it's thank you for that, Tony. Sorry, everyone. Tinez, you are actually showing your full screen. Yeah, okay. Oh, wow. That's a great first one to pop up, especially for a theme that Tony, Andrew, and the team, come up with. I guess with, a takeaway like this is really powerful. Thank you. So we have to share my vulnerability, to be the change, to listen, to check in with someone, have an open heart, listen more, courage. Yeah. And I think this really speaks of how the word braver is really going beyond just the literal meaning of brave, but it talks so much about also the other qualities that come with being brave. Thank you. This is such a beautiful word cloud. I think it also sort of bring, as Gokwa said, the hearts together, and not just the minds. Yeah, beautiful. All right. So, we come to the end of the Harsh session. As I said, sorry that's a bit a short one and rushing you through a little bit. But as you can see, it's really about just giving ourselves the opportunity to be in a silent space, and no one better than sort of making us comfortable in the silent space than our friends from the deaf community, and giving them an empowered space to be who they are and who they can be. We also just wanted to quickly go through, if there's no time, I'm happy to skip this, but Dinesh, if you could quickly go through. So the Harsh experience really comes with 4 zones. And the 4 zones, we compress some of that in the experience you just had. It's intention, the Harsh zone, which is a reflection zone. There's also an expression zone that we use tea as ink to do tea art. And of course, a sharing zone, which we can't do because, we usually have to do this when we can actually listen or see each other. But we do this, in person now, now that, all the restrictions are off. But this is the kind of things we were trying to get ourselves to survive through the COVID period when we couldn't do the session in person. So thank you very much. The last Mentimeter that I would love for you to do is to go back to checking out. Before you do the feedback, maybe go to the checkout as well. Yeah, before then you do the feedback in your own time. Since we checked in, we should check out. And then as this is going on, Cynthia and Tony, back to you. Thank you very much for having Hush. The team is really appreciative of this space to be here with you. Thank you. Time is fine. Thank you. I just saw that. Thanks very much, though. But if there's anything you want to wrap up with, Cynthia and Tony, please go ahead. And for those of you who've done your checkout, kindly give us your feedback. I know it's a short version, but anything you can share with us really helps us to improve the experience, especially for Gokwa. Because, well, he's done an awesome job today also. It's a new skit that he came up with just for you all, actually, by the way. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kokwa. And thank you, Harsh Tiba, for such a mindful and inspirational experience. Unfortunately, we're now at the end of our time together today. And I would like to thank each and every one of you, our audience, for your time and for your participation. You're all truly wonderful. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our guest speakers, Anthea, Zakit, and Pete. Your sharing both through the keynote and the panel was so insightful. I know I personally have several takeaways as a leader, market participant, and colleague. We have one final suggested hack in the form of a quote by Frank Outlaw, former CEO of Buy Low Stores in America, and it goes like this. Watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character, they become your destiny. Building braver cultures in our industry means that each one of us building new habits that shape our character and our destiny. Today, we invite you to build those habits and shape the destiny of our industry to deepen inclusion where everybody has the freedom to dance to their own diverse abilities. On behalf of Aon and AIA, thank you so much for being with us today. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and well.